Welcome to episode 22 of the Acknowledge to Action podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Benko, and today we are joined by Jay Browning, whose journey has taken him from the Marine Corps to law enforcement and into a fulfilling career in fundraising and consulting. Jay shares how mentorship, networking, and leadership has shaped his career and personal growth. We will discuss his transition from military to civilian life, the challenges he faced along the way, and the lessons he learned about building a supportive network. Jay also dives into the difference between coaching and consulting, the importance of accountability, and how intentional planning can drive meaningful progress in life. If you're looking to better navigate life's transitions and gain insights on purposeful leadership, this episode is for you. Jay, thank you so much for being here on the Acknowledge to Action podcast. I'm really excited for our conversation today, and this is really awesome for us to reconnect like this.
Yeah, Matt, I've been looking forward to this. I've been following you, obviously, when we worked together, but then as you've kind of went on, and I see a lot of your stuff on LinkedIn, so I'm excited for the opportunity, and thank you.
Oh, it's great. We worked at Montgomery County Community College together, and there were a couple of projects we worked together on, and that's kind of where our relationship started, and it's evolved into what it is now, professionally and personally. So I'm really excited to hear more of the behind the scenes story and share with our audience, really, about you and Browning Advisors, your military experience and history, and how and where you are today.
Where am I today? Wow, it's election day too, right? I didn't pick that date intentionally, but wow, what a crazy time we're in right now. So, one thing I wanted to start with was, and of course now I forgot what it was, but you asked me about my journey. So I guess right out of high school, well, even before high school was finished, I was hanging around with five guys. We were all on a wrestling team and football team together, and we thought, the world revolved around us. So when summer was coming, it was early in the year, when summer was coming, they were like, well, what are you going to do this summer? I'm like, I have no idea. And they're like, well, we're going in the Marine Corps. I'm like, okay, what was I thinking? I have family members that have been in the military, and my brother, is a 3 Purple Heart recipient Marine from Hue, the Battle of Hue in Vietnam. I had some inkling, but I had no idea. Fortunately, my mother was a tough Welsh woman, and boot camp I got in trouble more in boot camp for laughing than I did. I mean, I did my share of exercise, but I would get in trouble for laughing because of the funny things that I would hear people say and how they would react. So, and then of course I was with 4 of my friends, and we all kind of scattered after boot camp. But I got to tell you, I think I said this to somebody just the other day, even though that was 1976, some days it feels like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
I mean, that, how you probably, maybe not, but there's a commercial campaign about the Marine Corps that said the change is forever. Mm-hmm. I absolutely believe that. I feel like I probably couldn't. I'm 65 years old now, but I feel like I could put that uniform on and go right back to work.
Yeah.
Mentally, I could. I mean, my body could never handle that, right? So I got through boot camp. Really wanted to be an MP, but I wasn't old enough. I was 17. You had to be 18. So what did I do? My friendly neighborhood recruiter sent me to artillery school at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. Artillery. Yeah, that's me. Never saw a piece of artillery. Spent 15 years in uniform, never saw a piece of artillery. I was, fortunately, God blessed me with enough intellectual ability that I was at least in the planning and the operations of artillery and doing azimuths and all that stuff with their computer system. So I was able to stay away from the artillery training, of course, until I graduated from Fort Sill. Never forget that, man. It was cold. It was snowing in Fort Sill. And then I get ordered to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and I thought, okay, this is where I'm going to be. So you think, so we're into the holidays. So it's coming up on Christmas, and I'm getting ready to go home on leave. And somebody came through the barracks and said, hey, we got orders, we got an open billet for 12th Marines, which is where artillery, in Kaneohe Bay, Hawaii. Does anybody want to go? And nobody said anything. And I went, I'll go. So I was in Camp Lejeune about 3 weeks. I was home on leave again and then here I am going to Hawaii. So I'm 18 years old now in Hawaii. Wow. What an amazing experience that was for 4 years. But I go to 12th Marines, and the Marine Corps has this thing called the FAP program, the Fleet Assistance Program, where they take people from different MOSs and they augment the base side operations. This was a FAP program for MPs. So I got into the MPs, never came back. Never came back. I worked my tail off to make sure that they saw value in me, that I would get promoted, that I would get the MOS and all that stuff. So I literally went to artillery school, never touched artillery, never did anything with artillery except the barracks, and then moved to MPs, and I was in MPs the rest of my career.
So that opportunity went from a temporary augmentee to, and then with your work ethic and you with your focus and that decision you made, it's like, no, this is what I want to do, and
this is what I wanted all along.
Nice. And so then did they send you back to your MOS school as a result of that?
Yep.
How does that work a little bit?
Yeah, it does. Eventually, they transfer you to MP school. I went to MP school in Lackland Air Force Base, and then so I left Hawaii. Went to Camp Lejeune again. So I get to Camp Lejeune. Now I'm an MP.
Okay.
Now, having spent 4 years because I spent 4 years in Kaneohe, I had quite a bit of experience, 4 years doing MP work. I had now elevated myself into an investigator role.
Okay.
Already at 4 years. So when I got to Camp Lejeune, I was a street cop, but I was doing traffic investigations.
Okay.
So, different than just plain old MP. I'm doing MV. Then I get specialized training, and I am always been somebody who's been, and I should have realized this about myself very early on, that I will suck up any education I can get my hands on. Yeah. So I went back to back. I ended up going to a bunch of schools at the University of North Florida and Northwestern University, because that's where the Traffic Institute was. And then that split off, and there was something in Florida. So I got a lot of training at Camp Lejeune.
And that's all while you were active duty, and so
yep.
While you're getting your MOS training, learning yep. Marine Corps training, and that's pretty cool.
I got promoted pretty quickly to sergeant, and then staff sergeant. Transferred to Yuma, Arizona. The metropolis of the heat box. Yeah. It's funny. I got a story about Yuma. So my son, I tell people when I couldn't wear the uniform anymore, because I'm still a Marine, because you're a live Marine and you're a dead Marine. So when I couldn't wear the uniform anymore, I grew another one, and he's a master sergeant, and he's done 6 combat tours, and wow. He was in one of his pre-deployment training sessions, and he was born in Yuma. Okay. So he's at Yuma doing pre-deployment training because it's hot there and they're getting people prepared for Iraq and all that, right? Calls me on the phone, Dad, how in the hell did you live here? And I said, well, it's a dry heat, that stuff. You get used to it. He goes, it's 2:00 in the morning out here, and it's 112. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, I know, son. You were born, it was 117. So, so Yuma was an interesting experience because that was a Marine air base, so kind of different. Now I'm moving up in the rank a little bit. And then I got orders to Quantico, Virginia. Great place. Running the investigations team, and then on to Okinawa, Japan.
Wow. Those are some awesome duty stations.
Yeah, and this one was accompanied, right? It wasn't a 1-year tour by myself. I could take my family. So my son and my daughter were both there, and I was in the traffic department, right? So I'm running the police motorcycle team. Like a dream for me.
Yeah.
I got 12 guys. All we're doing is riding motorcycles. And, I don't know if you're familiar with the military setup on Okinawa, but most of that island is military. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a lot of civilians, but there's bases everywhere. So I would have there was times I would go on an accident or a criminal investigation and have to take a helicopter because it was on the furthest end of the island. But I ran the motorcycle team, and I have pictures of that and stuff. It's really cool. But one day, we started doing these force marches. Now, look, I was a base MP. I wasn't a combat guy. And the packs are getting heavier and we're going further distance. And all of a sudden I'm starting to have back problems. And I just thought, you're getting old, but it didn't get better. So what ended up happening is I was ordered to go to sick bay because I was just like, I'll just work and it'll get better. It's just muscular. It wasn't muscular. It was a fracture. There was a couple of vertebrae fractured. And so I had surgery. Surgery didn't go well. I mean, they fixed the fracture, but they took some bone out of my hip. Then I lost feeling in my right leg. Then I couldn't run. And before you know it, you're not a Marine anymore.
Yeah.
So very quickly, they packed me up and sent me to Camp Pendleton in California to discharge me. They packed the trash out of my kitchen in my house. I literally unpacked, like, I don't know, 3 months later after we got settled, all the trash from my house in Okinawa was still in the trash cans. So that's literally how fast they moved me out of there.
Wow.
What I didn't know we were doing. Yeah. What I didn't know.
Wow.
Right. And I don't know. It's just I was supposed to do that or something, and I may have, it was all a blur. But what I didn't know, Matt, is when I got back to the States and then and eventually got discharged and went back to my hometown, which is in South Jersey, we were training for the first Gulf War. I didn't know. I mean, they don't tell you. This is what we're doing this for. Just do what I tell you to do, right?
Yeah.
Because literally, I got discharged in December of 1990. January of 91, they started dropping bombs.
Wow. So you did 12 years. Was that 12 years in the Marine Corps you did?
14. Almost 15.
Wow. And you got medically discharged as a result of compounding injuries. Wow.
Yeah.
14 years.
So, that's a shock. You got a family.
Oh my God.
Only thing I knew was law enforcement. Only thing I knew was the military. So what am I going to do? The VA's telling me you got a bad back, you can't be in, and I'm like, pfft. So I went to Harrisburg and we moved to Lancaster, and I went to the police academy in Harrisburg, and graduated, and then got an associate's degree, started working in law enforcement for a while. But the VA was telling me, you got to get out of this you got to get out of this work. You're going to end up in a wheelchair because I have wire holding my vertebrae together, and so I transitioned from that, having had started a couple of nonprofits. One for kids using life skills using golf for life skills, which is now called the First Tee. That's what it was called then too. I had a chapter in Lancaster, and then the other one was around law enforcement. So I thought, maybe I can make a sidestep over here because the VA was retraining me, right? So I got into voc rehab.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
It's chapter 31.
Yeah, I don't know what it was called when I was there, but it was called voc rehab when I was there. It was probably called something else now. And so they said, you need a business degree. Think about this. From 18 on, I was in law enforcement. Yeah. So almost 14 of the 15 years I was on active duty, I was in law enforcement. Now I got to learn business. That didn't make any sense with me, right? And there was really no explanation about it. Just like your personality, they did the diagnostic testing. Your personality says you really should have a business degree. They were right, but I struggled with that. I finished my degree. And then got a job working while I was doing my degree in voc rehab. I got a job in Big Brothers Big Sisters doing fundraising. Just thought, I sold myself to get into that position, and it was a grassroots organization, so it wasn't challenging. At least I didn't think it was going to be. It was very challenging. I stayed there through the whole rest of the time I was at Penn State finishing my degree, and then Penn State hired me to work on the first $1 billion campaign, and that just launched my fundraising career. I didn't even know fundraising or advancement was a career. I didn't have any idea.
So to kind of recap a little bit, so you got medically discharged from the Marine Corps.
Yep.
You then went to the police academy in Harrisburg. In law enforcement. How long were you in law enforcement?
5-6 years.
5-6 years. Okay. And then the VA, you qualified for voc rehab, which is now technically veteran readiness and employee, VRE. So chapter 31. Yeah. And that gave you the tools and the resource and the access to go on, get your business degree from Penn State. Right. And then, but in between that, you mentioned 2 nonprofits. Like, what did you do that before you got connected with the VA or that program? Like, how did you get involved with starting those 2 nonprofits that you referenced?
I saw an opportunity. I love golf. I suck at it, and with a bad back, I can hardly play. But I love golf, and I saw an opportunity to do something with kids, and I thought, I kind of like that idea.
Is that why
So
you went
that
law
was the first
enforcement?
thing. Yeah, it
Right.
was a franchise,
Okay.
like a franchise, right? It's an international organization now. I
Okay.
was back in the early days of this. This was in Lancaster County as well. And the other one was really around law enforcement, right? Pulling people together. I don't know. It just seemed like the right thing to do. So I organized this group, and we did some fundraising. We did some good things in the community. And then I thought, maybe I could parlay that into this thing over here while I'm trying to figure out what the business degree is going to offer me, not really understanding what that was really all
Yeah.
about. And then that started a fundraising career, right? And that I never really saw myself doing. But it's interesting. When I finished my degree, I got hired by Penn State right away, and they were starting their first, which I think now they've just finished their third $1 billion campaign. It's a huge operation. There's like 150 fundraisers, and so
Yeah.
I was a road warrior. I was all over the country. But what was interesting about that is I kept struggling with, how do I use this business degree? What part of business do I fit in?
Hmm.
All the time my mind is going leadership, leadership, leadership.
Yeah.
You like leadership. I was fascinated with the generals and how they would inspire people to do things they could never do. I've read all the autobiographies, and all of a sudden I went across the hall to the career services office and took, I don't know, some kind of occupational survey or something. And I always joke about this. The two occupations my survey resulted in was, one, undertaker. No. Two, fundraiser. Duh. And that's where I stayed for the next 25 years.
Wow. So it sounded like it was a little bit of opportunity, preparation, circumstance, all those things that go into what kind of prompts us and what motivates us. But what I'm hearing and what I'm finding like really interesting and really cool to hear is how you internally recognize that. Like, hey, this golf thing, you just took it upon yourself. No one prompted you, hey, this is what you should do. You internally recognize that, and I would say, diversified your personal portfolio by going into uncharted territory because it just felt right in the moment. And then
Yeah,
from there,
it
it
wasn't a
was like a
strategy. Like, I hadn't
yeah.
thought this all out. And I will tell you, I got some of the best advice I ever got from a VA counselor in Harrisburg. Let me try to see if I can figure out around what year that was. That was in the 90s, in the early 90s, 92, 3, something like that. I was trying to figure out where to go to school, right?
Okay.
So I'm working. I want to go to school. Maybe I want to go to school full time. And I met with my counselor in Harrisburg, and this was an old Vietnam vet that was in bad shape, had his jaw replaced and stuff. Awesome guy. And he took me under his wing and he said, "Look, you get one shot at this. Pick the school that's going to mean something 10 years from now, and that has a network that can help you
Oh,
build a career."
he nailed it.
Oh my gosh, did he nail it? And right then I knew I
Wow.
needed to go to Penn State. And I'm telling you, I'm still plugged into the alumni. That's the largest network of alumni in the United States that are dues paying. I have moved to Florida and met with large
Yeah.
networks of people. Here, I'm in one right now in this group. That was an amazing piece of advice for me.
Yeah.
You can get a bachelor's degree in business. Right now, at the time I was living right outside of Millersville University. I could have walked to the campus. He
Yeah.
said, "Not a bad school, but do they have a network of alumni that can help you around the country or around the world?" Wow, did that just freaking set my mind in a fit. And now, as I think back on that, that was probably the single best piece of advice I ever got.
That yeah, as I'm hearing all that, because and you were at the perfect not the perfect, but the ideal point in your life where you were able to hear that, absorb it, and just really like take it and run with it. Because if you would have heard that 5 years prior, you'd be like, okay, thanks, and then it wouldn't have really registered the way it did
Yeah.
at that time in your life based off those circumstances.
So real quickly, I started at Big Brothers Big Sisters first.
Okay.
I finished there. Then I got hired at Penn State right away. I left Penn State, went to a nonprofit in Lakeland, Florida for 2 years. My mother got sick. I got hired at Florida Atlantic University in Boca Raton. I was there 5 years, very successful. Then our first grandchild's coming. University of Maryland hires me. I'm there for a few years. Then Cabrini College, which is now Cabrini University, which is now closed, outside of Philadelphia, hires me. Then University of Cincinnati hires me there for 5 years. And then I finish at Mako.
Where we met.
All because of that network and understanding, I was a cop. I didn't need networks. I had a brother who was wearing a badge right next to me. It was just my mindset. I didn't think, out here, you really need to leverage your network. And so that's been my piece of advice to my son and my daughter-in-law and everybody else that I talk to. It's an amazing opportunity. I was in judges' houses for holidays in Florida because they were Penn State alum, and so was I. The access to people was unbelievable.
I like how you said access and accountability, right? That's a whole nother sidebar conversation we could have, but access to these opportunities. And there's three things that are really jumping out at me that really are coming to mind as we speak: mentorship, networking, and leadership. And a lot of those things can be buzzwords. They could be like, okay, leadership, but you have to earn all three. You have to work your ass off to network. You have to work your ass off to earn a mentor. Because it's like, why should I mentor you? Any good mentor is going to be like, all right, you got to put some skin in the game, and I'm not going to just mentor you because I feel like it. You have to ask for it. You have to earn it. Leadership too. And I think those three things, that's the energy. That's what I'm getting. Well, because I've known you a little bit too, Jay. So it helps having some of that behind the scenes. But hearing you share more detail to your story, those three things really jump out at me. As far
when I moved to Florida Atlantic University in Boca Raton, the woman that hired me, her and I have been friends since that day, which was 2003.
Okay.
And she hired me at the University of Cincinnati 10 years later, 11 years later, and we're still very close.
Yeah.
The point is, she has become a mentor to me as well as an advisor, but because she took interest in me, right? Yeah. She there was something, I don't know if it was my military service or if it was just that I was a hard worker or whatever it was, but she saw something in me that she invested in me. And I'm telling you, when you find somebody who will go to bat for you, so to speak, who will give you the hard news, tell you what you need to be doing, to say things to you that maybe nobody else will besides maybe your spouse. That literally changed my trajectory of my career. It was unbelievable.
And this isn't, how do I want to say this? Most things in life, most exchanges in life are a transaction. And there's something in return, whether it's mentorship, whether it's just, hey, I'm interested, because I think a good mentor realizes they learn from mentees just as much, vice versa. And it's a reciprocated process. And that to me is a transaction. Like, oh, I'm doing this because there is a return on investment, whether it's emotional, whether it's just because I just like to do it and it makes me feel good. I don't think that's selfish. I don't think that's by any means. It just, you got to have a reason to want to do something. And sometimes we're not able to define it. I don't think there's a clear metric for things like that, like those tacit sort of experiences. It's like, no, but at the same time, both parties have to be in line with one another to a certain extent. But it mentorship and networking and leadership kind of seem to all kind of like tie in with one another, and you build. Sometimes mentorship starts first and then networking next, or vice versa. I don't know. I don't think there's any rinse and repeat model out there, but I think this is a good transition that's why having a good consultant and all that helps, because it helps us kind of.
Let's talk about the difference between coaching, which you hear a lot of nowadays, coaching, training, and mentoring. So coaching is where you say, hey, I'm here and I want to get there. I want to achieve something, some new opportunity, some new level, whatever that is. So a coach helps you get from where you are to where you want to be.
Okay.
A training is transferring knowledge, transferring information in an education setting. So there's a set curriculum, there's a course or whatever, and you're transferring that to somebody. Mentorship is where you're using the experience of the mentor to help you get to the next level, or to meander through your career and whatever situations you're going through. That's the difference. So if I'm mentoring you, I'm not necessarily coaching you, and I'm probably not training you, but I am saying to you, hey, in my experience, what I've done when I've been facing that situation is I've done X. Whereas a coach would say, okay, we agreed upon a plan that said you wanted to get from here to here. Here's what we said we were going to do. I'm here to hold you accountable to get there.
Okay.
That's the differences, right? So while I'm at Cincinnati, and this woman that I had worked, that hired me at Florida Atlantic, hires me at Cincinnati, she says to me, I know you like leadership, and I need you to get some leadership training. We have 14 colleges with fundraisers under each one of them reporting to her, and I need you to get some training. I was her number 2. So I did my research, and I came back with a couple of different options. And then I said, hey, there's this thing you can go away to a certification program for John Maxwell, who's the number 1 leadership expert in the world. And I kind of went off on that. Now, we had sent some people away to some of his courses, so we kind of knew who he was. And I had started reading some of his material some time ago. She said, go. Changed my entire life. That one decision opened the door for me to not only know his material and how to use it. And, they coach you through sales and how to coach people and how to train people. And so now I come back and I'm training people in leadership at our organization, which had 140 staff. Fast forward. So I kept doing that. They also help you at the Maxwell Leadership to start your own business if you're interested, which was, so of course I'm working full time, but I'm doing this on weekends and holidays, or weekends and nights. I'm coaching people. I'm doing training on the side. I'm speaking places, right? So when this opportunity for me in January was to step away and do this full time, now I do 5 things. I coach, I speak, I train, I assess behavior with the DISC assessment, and I play the leadership game. That's the 5 things I do in my consulting business. And I'm there to try to help leaders get better, how to help teams get better. If you're an individual, and I'm working with a guy right now who's like, you know what, I've helped a lot of people get their goals, but I've never really had my own goals. So can you coach me through that and help me get on track and hold me accountable? That's the kind of stuff I do every day now. But it's never a straight line. I mean, I've been all over the place, which I think helps me, even though it's not industry specific, right? I don't deal with many people from higher ed or the military, but because I've had such a diverse background and been leading in 3 different industries, it's helped me a lot.
Wow, that explanation, because I think about that from time to time, like, why a coach, why a consultant, why a trainer, and you detailed it great. Because if somebody doesn't really have an idea, they may want to start with a coach, it sounds like, to help formulate that plan and turn a thought into idea into a plan. So would you say, if I'm hearing this right, in the way I'm picking up what you're putting down, is when your thought turns, or an idea turns into a thought, and a thought into a plan, they would come see you, a consultant, when you have a plan in place, it's time to see the consultant, or it's best to see the consultant. But if you're struggling with the thought, like you're dipping your toes in the water with wanting to start your own business, entrepreneurship, or what school to go to, but you have this like macro vision, would coaching be more appropriate?
Yeah, because I'm not going to help you go establish your LLC and get funding and all that. What I'm going to say to you is, you said you wanted to do this. You wanted to start a business. So let's lay out a plan on what you have to do. You execute, I hold you accountable. Did you do it? When we meet the next time, what happened? Why didn't it get done? What can we do to get back on track? You said you wanted this done by X number of time. So then I'm hoping to help you see clearly on what you want to do. One thing you said that I think is important is that many times people don't come with a plan. Look, if you watch some of my video that I did last week, I'm talking about personal growth. Most people go, personal, what is that? Personal development, self-development, whatever you want to call it. But most people want better for their lives, but they don't do anything to change it. So they end up staying where they are. So think about this. If I say to you, Matt, I'm going to help you lay out a 5-year plan. We're going to take some time and we're going to talk through 5 or 6 categories: finance, community, faith, relationships, career, whatever those, what are those goals? What is one goal at least, but where do you see yourself 5 years in each of those categories? Okay. In great detail. And then that's back up. What's 1 year? What's the first year look like? Same thing in that category. How do you get to that goal year one? Many people look at it if they don't have plans. They know where they're going on vacation this summer,
Yeah.
but they don't know where they're going in 5 years because they react to life. They don't plan their life. So think about this. If you don't have a plan and somebody calls you on the phone and says, Matt, I want to buy your podcast, you go, wait, I got to think about this. But if that's not in your plan, you don't have a plan. So it may be that that helps you get further if you had a plan and can look at it through the lens of a 5-year vision instead of just seeing how it feels and looks today, right?
Yeah. The power of processing, and that's whether when it comes to consulting and coaching, having access to that resource and that professional service is so critical, because we need to think out loud, because it's one thing internally and we could jot things down, but when we share it, we get challenged, and when we get challenged, we get better. And that's my understanding of it. And and I could share some of my experience, as a counselor and a therapist, and it's similar. It's okay, what is your plan? And then when you have that plan, you have those objectives, and you have to talk it out. Whether
Yep.
and you could be the smartest, most motivated person there is on the planet, right? But you still, even, let's go to sports, like Michael Jordan. They said he was one of like Phil Jackson said he was one of the best to coach. And you would think Jordan, yeah, right, he had it all figured out. No, it's because he was coached, trained, and mentored or consulted by Phil Jackson. And it was that reciprocated process. It wasn't because, did Michael Jordan have extreme talent? Yeah, he did. But when talent, you transfer that to skill, that's a game changer. Which then we could have that
Well,
argument.
and think about somebody who, like, if Michael Jordan didn't have a goal, like he probably had some kind of mental goal that I want to be great, I want to achieve a national title or whatever. If he didn't have that, if he wasn't coachable, you could try to your blue in the face to try to help him, but he wasn't receiving your coaching. See,
Yeah.
so the big part about coaching is receiving coaching, understanding that you've come to somebody not because you're bad and they're good, but because they have a skill set that they can help you, and you need an extra set of eyes and ears helping you to get there. You're going to do the work, right? He made all the shots, he missed all the shots. Phil Jackson was on the sideline telling him, hey, why don't you try this technique? And if he'd have blew him off and said, I don't want to listen to you, where would he be? He wouldn't be where he is now, because he was a coachable and he would accept that. And Phil came to him as a coach, not as a dictator, but as a coach with an agreed upon plan. There's no stopping you.
Yeah, that's what's great about these conversations. I love how these things come up like organically and
Yeah.
naturally, because we draw motivation and guidance and resources, and I mean, we go down the list as far as like describing it from so many different sources. And when we make it our own and we apply it to our world and our situation, it just helps. It helps detail those items in our life to help get further in our objective in our journey to help
Sometimes it just
grow.
validates your thinking, right?
Yes. Yeah, the power of validation. Acknowledge to action. Here we are. You acknowledge, but it's a whole nother. Then it's like, all right, how does it, when we internally validate and own it, and then of course, external sources, whether it's through network or friends, family, man, that just does something too. That gets you that momentum to keep going. That's great. So before I share a quote, I want to ask you, what is your you are passionate about leadership, and you've studied it, and you've been a leader in your community and your respective throughout your career. You've demonstrated what leadership is. What is leadership to you? Please define it.
Oh, thank you for saying that. It was one of the things I was thinking in the back of my head. Like, I want to be able to get to that. And we never got there. Having done leadership since I was basically 17 years old in 3 different industries, I've been blessed with seeing a lot of different samples of leadership. Some good, some not so good. Mm-hmm. And I've learned from every one of them, right? You can learn from a bad leader. You learn what not to do, right? I love the definition of leadership from John Maxwell. John Maxwell says very clearly 2 things about leadership that have always stuck with me. 1, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. It is purely influence. Number 2, everything, and I would challenge anyone to say something different than everything, rises and falls on leadership.
Yeah. And this wasn't by design, or this is strictly through chance and circumstance. When I was in NCO Academy a few years back with the Air Force, we're charged and challenged with coming up with, I don't call it a speech, but we have to do a presentation, what leadership is. I came across this quote, and it happened to be a John Maxwell quote.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And it was like, and it just stuck with me. And it just,
Sure.
To this day, it's like, a good leader knows the way, shows the way, and goes the way. And boom, that's when I had this like moment with myself. And since then, I've read a lot of his material, and I've been tracking him and following. But that to me is like, and it just was so clear, so concise, but yet profound at the same time.
It is. And that's one of the things, if you've, not you personally, but if you've not read his material, if you've not went to YouTube and Googled John Maxwell and just watch how he speaks, when he's 78 years old, he's written his 100th book, and his 100th book is called High Road Leadership. It's about leadership culture, building a leadership culture. The guy is just full of wisdom, and I'm blessed to get mentored by him. Of course, I'm certified at the highest level of his company. I'm one of 50,000 people around the world that practice his material. But I got to tell you, his stuff has changed my life.
Yeah,
it really has. If somebody said to me, okay, of all the things you know about John, what would you say is the one thing you could say about him? If you needed one word, he is known and preaches this word called intentionality. Mm-hmm. Effort doesn't mean anything if it's not intentional. You're wasting your time. Yeah. You're wasting your time building goals. You're wasting your time trying to lead people because you're not doing it intentionally. You're just doing it happenstance, right? And so nothing happens by chance. Anything meaningful, you've got to be intentional about it. So I got to tell you, man, that's probably the thing that's hung, even though those 2 quotes that I mentioned about leadership are really valuable and I use them all the time. That thing about intentionality would probably be the thing that I would say about him. He has drilled that into our heads as his coaches and speakers and trainers to realize that how important it is to be intentional about anything you're doing.
This, as I'm hearing all this, the power of a metaphor, right? There's so much value in that. And what came to mind when you were saying intentionality, I thought about landscape, right? And just bear with me here for a second, like landscape. So if you let nature do its thing, the natural organic, it's gonna grow. It's gonna do what nature does. But landscape, you have to have intention. I want to have tree here. I want to put the bushes here, and that takes. I mean, just think about it. If you don't weed and you don't put mulch down, nature's going to do its own thing. So, again, that's the vision I had.
Yeah, that's really.
You got to mindscape, like landscape. You got to mindscape intentionality, and because if not, it's just things could be unrecognizable, or you're going to have trouble with that plan in place,
or you may never achieve what you hope to achieve, right?
Yeah. It's just I like that, like intention. I've shared this a couple of times in my podcast, and I focus a lot like on emotional intelligence, communication, and a number of things. But what the core values I have when I'm dealing with, whether it's personal or professional, I always strive to be honest, respectful, and intentional or slash purposeful. Right. And I think when we ground ourselves in those three components, it can be applied to so many different things.
I
So if
agree.
you're having a tough time, or you're having trouble, or you're emotionally like charged, those three, for me, those things ground me out. And I love that intention thing, because it's like, why am I about to say what I'm about to say? Because the
Right.
intention is to address this. And I could go on, I could
Oh
incorporate
yeah.
some of the stuff in the Air Force career with CRM, how we use CRM, crew resource management, and how critical that is, being in the moment. But I think it speaks to what you were saying earlier, Jay, how being in the moment, those years when you heard, hey, Penn State, or go to a school that has this network, like there's intentionality in that voc rehab counselor's message to you,
Yeah.
and you absorbed it. I mean, it was just like boom. I mean, you were dialed in, and the rest is history. And I mean, we could go down the list and kind of inventory when we had those moments, and that really speaks to the acknowledge to action sort of ethos of what this represents. Is like,
Yeah.
sometimes acknowledgement is a punch in the face, and we're forced to acknowledge and recognize. Other times, not so much. Sometimes we got to put some effort in. So hearing what you're saying is just really awesome, because it's a combination of all those things.
Well, it makes sense, right? It's not rocket science. It's not some theory. And to that end, if you'll allow me, I created this LLC to do this work.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I wanted some core values, and I wanted a tagline. And so here's what I've come up with. My company, Browning Advisors, does really three things. We invest in people, which is a little unusual from a company perspective, but not my kind of company. We inspire potential, and we ignite leadership. Those are the three things encapsulated when I get into an elevator with somebody. That's the three things I talk about. And why is it those three things? Well, first of all, investing in people means we go the extra mile. Everybody has value. Sometimes they don't know they have value. Sometimes they have skills and abilities that they don't really even know. So I'm gonna do my best to try to pull them out so they can be seen, and they can amplify them and work on them. Two, there's much more we're capable of as people than we really believe. And sometimes it's nothing more than encouraging each other.
Hmm.
You know, when you're in the military, you got this ecosystem that says you either produce or you're going to be in trouble, right? You got this set of rules and regulations, you have a structure, and it's very clear. But when you step out here, all that goes away unless you
Yeah.
bring it with you.
Yeah.
So my inspiring potential really goes along with the idea that you're capable of much more than you think you are. Somebody asked me one day, "What's the biggest thing you took away from Marine Corps boot camp?" And it was that I'm capable of doing much more than I even thought I was,
Hmm.
that I even dreamed that I was,
Yeah.
because they pull it out of you, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, igniting it at leadership. I think there's a hidden leader in each of us. Some of it's deeper. Some of us really have no aspirations to do that. But if you're influencing people, if people are following you because of how you believe or what you think or how you do things, you're leading. So take it seriously. And that's kind of how we operate.
And we all have that potential. We do. We don't have to have like these big accolades or initials behind our name to be
Yep.
classified as a leader. We could be a leader within our neighborhood and our small microcosms.
Yep.
It could be one on one. It's just, I like that. If you inspire people and bring the best out of people, that's really what it comes down to. I mean,
It is.
and it should. That should be the reminder of what, like going to John, knows the way, shows the way, and goes the way. That, I'm telling you, it was one of those profound,
That
not
was
like
the
this
light
like
bulb
life
minute,
change,
right?
but it was a light bulb. I'm like, yes, it makes sense to me. Like, you don't have
Yep.
to overthink it. Like, I'm gonna bust my ass to learn the way. That's my responsibility, and then I'm going to up my game with responsibility. Then I'm going to show others. I'm going to empower others. And then I'm
Yep.
going to be right there along with them, next to them, behind, wherever I need to be with that team to support them and bring the best out of all involved.
Yep. Yep.
Um, that's great. we could go on and on about. That's what I love about these conversations.
Yeah.
They capture it and all that. What would you say to somebody who's struggling or having a hard time identifying a plan? So whether like, do I need a coach? Probably if they're thinking about they need a coach, they probably do need a coach and not ready for a consultant. But if they're kind of like identifying like, hey, I'm not really where I want to be or where I need to be, what what advice do you have for somebody to help kind of like channel that acknowledgement? Okay.
Yeah.
So if somebody acknowledges this, how can you get them to the point of action?
Yeah, I think there's an important step before that. As military people, we are taught to be self-reliant.
Mm-hmm.
And that means we don't ask for help. Yeah. We're not good at it. I can figure this out because that's what we're taught, right? You're in a bad situation, you've got your training, you figure it out, right? But you don't have to do that out here. There's a lot of us that are willing to do whatever to help someone. So if you're struggling with trying to figure out what direction, and I just helped, I didn't do a lot, but I was at least there to listen. And lots of times we don't need somebody to tell us what to do, but just be a sounding board. Yeah. Because we talk through it and clarity starts to happen when we talk through it, when we're allowed to just say what's on our mind, when we say how we feel about something, how we're thinking about something. But I would strongly suggest that you get with a friend or somebody who's maybe at the level above where you are right now and sit and talk with them and ask them for advice. How did you get where you are? How did you maneuver through? Because I'll tell you, like the transition out of the military for me was very difficult because it happened just like that. Like one day I was wearing a uniform and the next day I wasn't. Right? When you're medically discharged, they don't have any time for you. You're done. Yeah. So I had to figure this out. And it took me a while. I started realizing, what do I have access to? What things can I do? There's a lot of stuff you can't do. And but you need somebody to help you kind of sort through your thinking. And I would strongly suggest people asking people for advice. Even if you gotta surrender and say, if I'm going to ask somebody for advice, I'm only going to ask somebody who's wore the uniform before. Okay, whatever. You may be missing something, but at least you're asking somebody to help you with advice. And that goes across whether it's personal or whether it's work or career. If you're struggling with life in general, like not sure what to do, I remember my son telling me, I don't know how to fit out here. I feel like I'm an imposter out here. And think about this. You're in that industry and there's a structure around you and you have rank. And because of that rank, you have responsibilities and certain decorums and things like that. Out here, all that's gone, right? Yeah. I mean, if you allow yourself, you can allow yourself to think that you're like I don't even know if I can get a job at Walmart. No, it's just you need somebody to help encourage and maybe direct you in a certain way. So I can't implore people enough to not to let that pride go and ask some people to listen to what I'm thinking and see if you can help me sort through this to make sense out of it. And then maybe you need a coach or maybe you need an advisor. I would suggest to you, and there's lots of professionals out there that say this, build your own board of directors. Yeah. And all they do is advise you. Some people that are for you, somebody who's 5 steps ahead of you in a career, somebody who's really good at telling you the truth and they're good to you. I mean, you start building a few people around you and start sifting your ideas through them, you will get what you need.
That's great. I really appreciate and value how you acknowledged how challenging it was, especially with your transition from the military, because it was so fast and sudden. So that in and of itself was a challenge. But just getting out of the military and that identity, whether it's 4 years, whether it's 20 years, whether it's 30 years, right? It's still, whether it's anticipated, planned, whatever, it's still it's a common, regardless of what branch of service we were in, what we did.
Absolutely.
Arguably, that is our underlying bond that brings us together is, how do I figure this out? Because it's real easy why we get in. We could just what motivated us, whether there's a line of sight, friends doing it. But after that, then it becomes like this incredible, powerful network and ethos of why we do what we do. And then when we're no longer plugged into that, it's that's a critical component of this podcast as well. So that's awesome. Jay, how can, so I know before we talked a little bit before we hit record, um, but how can individuals listening to this, how can they get connected with you? I know you mentioned a YouTube channel, and all that,
Yeah.
because you're a great access point. You're a good source of information, and I'm pretty confident individuals listening will want to follow up.
So the simplest way to reach me is go to my website. It's got all my
Okay,
contact information. It's got all my YouTube stuff. There's the buttons at the
nice.
top with all my social media, right? Because I'm everywhere. I don't do the TikTok, and I do Instagram, X, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Those are the four things I do. So browningadvisors.com is
Okay,
my website. Okay. You go there, there's phone numbers there, there's programs there, there's all the social media, like I said there. And look, I'm here to help. I'm partial to veterans. I will do whatever I can to help, even if it's pushing you towards another place besides me. I mean, I'm not the answer to everything, but I'm willing to do what I can to help, and I'm happy to do that.
that's great. I always like to think of, like, we need our life hack toolbox, and every toolbox unique to us, like you said. And I like how you said build um, our own board of directors,
Yeah,
and that's the power of networking, and that takes bravery. We got to get
yeah.
beyond our comfort zone and extend ourselves, and we got to be vulnerable.
Oh,
We have
absolutely.
to let ourselves be vulnerable. And I think a good true mentor and somebody who wants to help appreciates that, not
Oh,
because
yeah.
you're in a vulnerable spot, but because you're willing to acknowledge, hey, I just want to be a better version of myself. And those
Yep.
who've got there, and I can't speak for everybody, but more often than not, they want to help because they continue to get better as a result, and it's a
Sure.
gift that keeps on giving. So this is great. I really appreciated our time, our conversation. We worked together at Montgomery County Community College. So we had some good talks over the years, but this was
Yeah.
really special to me, and we were able to pull the layers back a little bit and share with the audience and those
Yeah. It's my
who are
pleasure.
listening.
I
Um,
enjoyed it very much.
oh, Jay, yeah, this is great. Well, I know. We talked before, and we do have an acknowledged action music song playlist. So,
Okay.
what song do you want to dedicate to the acknowledged action podcast? Whether it speaks to you, whether it's just a fun song, or there's something really specific that is like incredibly meaningful.
Well, it's November 5th, and in 5 days, it's going to be the Marine Corps birthday, and that's almost a holy day. Okay. Not quite, but it's close. And to all the Marines out there that they're getting ready to celebrate birthday, please be safe. Enjoy the 249th anniversary of our beloved Corps, and have fun. Trace Adkins, Semper Fi.
That sounds like an amazing song. I'm going to listen
It's a
to it.
great song.
It's going to be accessible. So we acknowledge action music playlist is on the YouTube and also on Spotify. So it's on the website, and all your information, the website to detail that'll be accessible in our particular episode details and comments
Okay.
and all that. So I look forward to staying connected with you.
Yeah, me too, Matt. And I'm here
Yeah,
if I can help you. You know to reach out to me, and I will do the same.
that I appreciate that. It's the same here, and whether I said this the past few times, I'm looking to have like an all call style sort of podcast where invite previous guests, and then again, real informal, laid back, but yet semi structured, kind
Yeah,
of like an all call. So we could just, hey, whoever shows up on the call, hey, let's talk about VA benefits, or let's just BS about transition. So that's in progress. That
good.
is a goal of mine in the Acknowledge Action podcast, to have that like all call once a month. So makes people come and go, have like open it up for like an hour the last Friday of the month or something like that. So
Sounds good.
you always have an open invite to that, and it would be great to have you there as that grows. So
Thanks for the opportunity, Matt. I look forward to it, and congratulations on the stadium recognition over the weekend. That was great.
I just want to say something to that. If they would have gave me that was an amazing honor. I'm still Philadelphia Eagles. What an amazing organization. They couldn't have done it better. That in partnership with Dietz and Watson, right?
Yeah.
If they would have gave me the microphone, and I knew they wouldn't, but I was thinking about it, in an alternate version of what happened.
We'd have still been there.
Yeah. Oh, man. But I would say thank you for this honors recognition, but it goes way beyond me because I've served along so many great men and women who are worthy of this.
Of course.
And on behalf of all of them, this is a privilege and an honor. And thank you, Philadelphia, and thank you, Philadelphia Eagle fans, for this. You guys are awesome because there's so many of us who dedicate and service, and I just was fortunate. I have some amazing colleagues and friends who nominated me for that. So
very nice.
So I appreciate that. That was something else. But
good.
So
take care, my friend.
Yeah, take care, Jay. I'll looking forward to staying connected, and thanks for everything.
Yep. All right. Good night.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Acknowledge to Action podcast. Today, Jay Browning shared his powerful journey from military service to law enforcement and beyond, offering us insights into the value of mentorship, networking, and intentional leadership. We discussed the importance of accountability, the distinctions between coaching and consulting, and how building a strong support network can help us navigate life's transitions. Remember, progress begins with intentional planning and action. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with others who might benefit. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast for more inspiring stories and insights. Wherever you are on your journey, you are not alone, and know the journey doesn't end here. Keep pushing forward, believe in yourself, encourage one another, and always strive to build strong, authentic relationships. Until next time, stay safe, be well, and keep moving forward with the power of Acknowledge to Action. This is the Acknowledge to Action podcast.